Hey guys, how's it going? Caesar here, and welcome back. I know it's been a while since the last upload, so for anybody who's not in the know, the reason that I've been away is I was actually moving from one place to another. I was living in an apartment and I was moving into a house, so I've been really busy with that. I'm going to be starting a series on MTS here in a couple of days, as some of you might have seen from my community post, and today I just want to go over the changes to MTS Season 4 that we know of so far. So, starting off, MTS Season 4 is going to have the tribe limit increase or reduce depending on how you look at it. Increase from the last season in the beginning, but reduce from the end. So, at the beginning of last season, I believe it was 4-man, and they ended up upping it to 6-man towards the end. So they're just going to go ahead and cut out the middleman and go with a tribe size of 5 for Season 4. This will allow people to get farther faster, but also decrease the amount of offline time they have, make raiding and defending a little bit more easy, because when it was especially 4 people, raiding was a little bit difficult late game, because if, 1 or 2 of you are on PvP cooldown, then it was really easy for the defenders to push. So I do think that the tribe size being 5 is going to be good. All of these things that they're talking about will be subject to change, so if late in the season, just like last season, there's an issue and they need to increase it, I definitely would expect that to happen as well. Rockwell and Extinction Titan kits are removed from the MTS membership, so this is due to some increasing concerns that the membership was a little bit pay to win. Now, being somebody who's played a lot of unofficial servers and seen what a truly pay-to-win server is, ones where you can spend hundreds of dollars to get insane amounts of, turrets and bullets and tech and all of that, I don't think that the boss kits were really a problem, but I do think that having the Rockwell and Extinction Titan kits removed does make it to where it's a little bit harder for you to get those really easy boss kits. So, for example, the Desert Titan's super easy to kill, and it does give some of, the better tech engrams, so I could see why that would be a little bit broken. The Rockwell one, I don't really see that as being, too OP, except for the Ascension for levels, but it will make it a little bit more of a thing to strive for, especially finding all of the alphas, so that's fine, I'm fine with that. Artifacts have been removed from all boss kits, which now only contain required tributes, so this is again just going to slow things down a little bit, make people actually have to go out and get the artifacts when they want to do the bosses, which is not a bad thing. Anything that, lengthens the goals of a tribe is going to be good. It's also going to make it to where going into, these different areas to get these artifacts, you're going to have to be a little bit more aware that other people might be there. So that'll encourage some open world PvP, which I'm fine with as well. Boss kits will be unavailable for use the first week of wipe and first week of all future beginners wipes. This again is just a thing that's going to separate the players who want to get it done as quickly as possible and don't mind actually going out and getting this stuff from the people who want to just, use the kits and not really farm for those things. I know me personally, I hate farming for the tributes, but if you want to remain competitive, then you're just going to have to suck it up and go and do it. Again, this is just another step that they're taking to remove the idea of pay to win being such an issue, because by the first week, especially on beginners later into the wipe, if you're a week into beginners and you haven't done the boss fights, even with having to farm the artifacts and tributes, that's kind of your problem. And if somebody else uses a boss kit to do it, then they're pretty much playing catch up with any relevant tribe anyways. Now this is a big one. The MTS Arc mod has been added, and I'm going to go over what all of these changes are. This is a custom mod made for MTS, and it does a lot of good things, so we'll just get right into that right now. So first is it nerfs the flamethrower to 5% HP, min 10, max 100 per second for 6 seconds rather. So originally, I believe it's the flamethrower does 10% of your HP, and now it's reduced to 5%. If you have high HP, you're still going to notice quite a bit but it's percent based, so just keep that in mind. So if you're 500 HP, you're going to lose 5%, which is 100 HP. But if you're, the 220 to like 300 range, like most people, then you're only realistically going to lose a much smaller amount. So it will actually be something that you can fight against now with like a compound bow or a fab. You may still have to spam med brews a little bit, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as it was. This will also kind of deal with the issue of Griffin Flamethrower, which I hope Wildcard will patch sometime in the future. But, we'll see about that. They decreased the bola time on humans from 25 seconds to 15 seconds. So that's a really good change as well. If you guys aren't aware, when you are bullied, if you punch, it actually takes a second off of your time, and you can punch roughly once every second. So this going from 25 to 15 does effectively make it to where if you are punching, you're only going to be bullied for about 7.5 seconds. Now, a really good player is still going to be able to kill you in that time, but if they do miss their shots, if you're jumping and going prone and things like that, then you should be able to get out, especially if you have med brews and halfway decent armor. Removed dive stun ability from Snow Owl completely when dive bombing into the ground. So I know this was a point of contention for a lot of people who thought that the Snow Owl was very overpowered, and this just completely removes the ability for the Snow Owl to slow at all. I don't like that it's not going to be able to be used on wild dinos, but it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make it to where I don't have to worry about people just spamming the slow so that, you can get caught by a Giga or whatever else. The first 10 seconds of a cryopotted Giga or Rhino being thrown out has the mech shield debuff, so it takes more damage and deals less damage. This is a pocket PvP nerf, and essentially what that does is when you throw your Giga or your Rhino out, it's going to have that effect as if you just left a mech shield, and you're going to take increased damage, and you're going to do reduced damage, and also be slowed for 10 seconds, which is really good. It's going to prevent people from just haphazardly throwing Gigas or Rhinos out every time that you PvP them. It still will be totally viable to use both of these, you just have to be a little bit more strategic with them. 3 times structure damage added to certain ceiling bases and caves. Full list to be posted in the future. So I don't know a whole lot about this one. I haven't really spoke with any of the admins, but essentially they're going to be adding 3 times structure damage to certain overpowered spots that I think that I can reasonably assume would be places like the ceiling spot on Valguero Aberration and the ceiling spot in the Sunken Forest on Extinction. Now, the 3 times structure damage is not nearly as much as a cave, but it still will make it to where people building there have to be more aware of their offline timer. They have to build appropriately to prevent cannon raiding, because cannon raiding is going to be a lot easier on these spots. Ovis, Iguanodon, and Enforcers all made untamable indefinitely. I'm not exactly sure why the Iguanodon is on this list. I would assume maybe it's something to do with using the seeds with the gachas or something like that. I could be wrong, could be off base, there could be an exploit that I'm not aware of. The Ovis, I'm going to go ahead and assume, is just because when you harvest Ovis with a chainsaw, and there's a lot of people doing it, it can cause latency issues. Also, they're a very, very broken source of hide, so maybe that has something to do with it. And the Enforcer, if you guys were not aware, was actually a mesh method. So I'm actually really glad to see that. Even though we have the anti-mesh and everything, it's good to have extra levels of precautions and remove mesh methods where we can, especially if it's with a dino that's not very much used in normal day-to-day arc. Snow Owls, Griffins, Gachas, Gas Bags, Rock Golems, and both of the other Rock Golem variants will all be tameable only 1 week after wipe and first week of all future beginner's wipes. So I think this is phrased a little bit weird. It should say untamable first week, which is what they mean. I don't want there to be any confusion about that, but essentially if you want to raid somebody and soak their base, within the first week you're going to have to use the normal, little bit lower tier methods, things like trikes and stegos and pararacers. So I do actually like that quite a lot. It's going to make especially the early game raids on beginners a little bit more balanced, because a lot of times people would see that like rock golems weren't tameable. I don't know if that was on MTS or just other servers, but rock golems would be untameable for a little while, and people would just rush gas bags in place of them. So I'm glad that they got that. The gotchas are also a good thing, because especially with element gotchas and things like that, it can get really out of hand. So I'm interested to see how that's going to shape the meta here on the first week. Triangle foundations, ceilings, and floors removed. I'm assuming that's just because of the decreased cost to craft them, but again, I have no idea. That could be an exploit or something. Wind turbines removed. I do know that's something to do with an exploit. I'm not exactly sure what. It could be something about LOSing turrets, and it probably is. S+ variants of crafting stations removed. That's probably just because the crafting stations with S+ are locked by default and have a lot more slots. Some of them take reduced amount of like gas and electricity or whatever to run. S+ animal tender removed. That's a good change, because it makes it to where you can't just idle farm Acatinas and things like that. So I'm glad to see that. It makes, again, anything that increases the grind on MTS, I'm happy to see within reason. Weekend rates will be disabled on launch weekend. That's also good. There's no reason to give us extra rates on the very first weekend, and it'll make it more approachable for people joining about a week or so into the game. Organic polymer and corrupted nodules stack size nerfed from 1000 to 250. I do like this a lot, because the thing is, with organic polymer stacking to 1000, especially once you got to the aberration bear farm method, it made it to where you'd only have to do poly runs every once in a while, unless you were crafting a whole lot, and it made it to where you would lose practically none of it for very, very cheap by just keeping it in containers and things that would extend its shelf life further. So going down to 250, it's going to make it to where you're storing thousands and thousands of organic polymers, going to be a little bit more cumbersome, so I do like that. S+ hatchery slot sizes change from 15 to 10. I don't really mind that too much. I didn't even know that it was only S+ hatchery on MTS only had 15 slots, but in all honesty, they're not that expensive to craft. If you're at the point where you're hatching, for instance, gigas 10 to 15 at a time, you should also have extra eggs to make more hatcheries, so that's not really a big deal. Hatchery range size decreased from 20 foundations to 15. Again, this just goes back to if they're going to reduce the amount of stacks that you can have in the hatchery, then just have a hatchery for each little area, or multiple for each, type dino that you're going to be using them for. So that's not really a big deal either. New rule 2.6, the use of any creatures not intended during boss fights is forbidden. This one does kind of hurt, and I do think some of you guys are going to give me flack for this, but let's be honest, the gigas and boss fights thing has been known about for a long time, and I even spoke to one of the wildcard enforcement team members about it, and they said it's not an actionable thing. If the unofficial server wants to have a rule about it, they're more than welcome to. I didn't really see it happening all that often on MTS anyway, so it's not a big deal. Rag boss fight, you can still do really easy with rhinos, so I don't really mind that too much. New rule 3.5, players are not permitted to place ORP zones on their fobs or spam when raiding. ORP is intended for main bases only. I didn't know people did this, so I'm actually glad this is a rule, especially for people who put them on their fobs and then would leave and go to other servers to like get resources and stuff, or even possibly log for the night and have their ORP on their fob. That's a little bit disgusting, and I do agree that probably shouldn't be a thing. Logging out during active PvP cooldown will result in your ORP taking 1 hour to activate instead of 30 minutes. I think this is a really good change, because this is going to prevent people from just logging out when their base is such a hassle to raid offline that it's not worth it. Because I do know there is some bases and some locations that are a lot easier to raid when you're online, and people will wait for you to log in and try and raid you then, and for you to log out and then them get 30 minutes of soaking or whatever they're trying to do and not be able to get in because then the ORP kicks on. That's really frustrating, so I do like that quite a lot. Vote rewards plugins removed temporarily. I'm not sure why that is, but to be honest, the vote rewards thing said that it was like a limited time thing since Season 2. And we've been getting it the entire time, like, so I guess that's not really that big of a deal. And then 4 Genesis maps coming 25th of February on release. So the last thing on the list of these patch notes for MTS is regarding hatch frame Quetzals, and this is just to, you know, clarify. It says, to avoid any confusion, please let it be known, hatch frames on Quetzals are allowed on MTS, and if you find a build suitable, structures limit on platforms has been heavily reduced from 1.0 to 0.35, so roughly a third, and is nerfed, so if you find a viable build, the method is still allowed to raid. Now, while I personally don't agree with this stance myself, I do see the point of people who use it where it's very easy to build against. Even on official, you can build against hatch frame Quetzals. Otherwise, everybody who had a base that was, you know, slightly elevated anywhere would be getting hatch frame Quetzed all the time. So it's not really that big of a deal. I do know there are some content creators who have been directly affected by this. Lifeless comes to mind. He got hatch frame Quetzed, I think, twice by Muntage. And so he's very, like, outwardly against it. But to be honest, it's their server. They can, you know, allow it or not allow it if they want to. It's not, you know, that broken. It's a little bit broken, but at the end of the day, I think canon method is way more broken than hatch frame Quetzals, and that's allowed on here too. So, you know, just let everybody know hatch frame Quetzals will be a thing. Make sure that you build accordingly. So yeah, guys, that's going to pretty much wrap things up for today's video. Just wanted to let you guys know all of the changes in case you're not in the MTS Discord. I'm going to put a link in the description to the MTS Discord. And like I said, I'm going to be playing when the wipe starts for MTS Season 4, starting on the 7th. So if you guys are interested in coming and hanging out and trying to kill me and, you know, all that, make sure that you know, come hang out on MTS, and we'll have some fun, guys. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.